The man knew her name. That was the first thing that stopped Cole Maddox cold. He was 20 yards away, walking Ranger along the cracked sidewalk bordering Willow Creek Learning Center, when he caught it. A soft voice cutting through the afternoon wind, too familiar, too deliberate for a stranger. "Emma, your mom asked me to take you home." The 11-year-old in the wheelchair went absolutely still. And Ranger, a retired military working dog who had walked through Fallujah without flinching, stopped mid-stride and locked onto that man like a targeting system. Cole's hand dropped to his side. 3 seconds. That's how long it took him to understand what was happening. If you've never subscribed to this channel, do it right now. Because the story you're about to hear will show you how one girl's quiet courage, one dog's instincts, and one man's refusal to look away changed everything. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit like, and don't you dare look away. The wheat fields outside Millard County, Nebraska didn't care about anyone's problems. They just stretched, flat and pale gold in every direction, bending when the wind told them to, standing back up after. Cole Maddox had been running the same 2-mile loop past Willow Creek Learning Center for 6 weeks, and he'd come to appreciate that about the fields. They didn't ask questions, they didn't offer opinions, they just were. He needed that right now. Ranger trotted at his left side with the loose, efficient gait of a dog who had spent years learning how to conserve energy between moments that mattered. He was 10 years old, a Belgian Malinois with a gray muzzle and one ear that had never fully straightened after a training incident in 2019. The VA had retired him the same month they'd retired Cole. Different paperwork, same result. They'd ended up together through a program that matched handlers with their former working dogs, and neither of them had complained about the arrangement. Cole wasn't running today. He'd visited the school's agricultural therapy program, a twice-monthly thing where veterans came in and helped kids with physical disabilities work the raised vegetable beds along the school's east side. He'd gotten rope-talked into it by his neighbor Patrice, who volunteered as an occupational therapist there on Thursdays. He'd shown up expecting to feel awkward and out of place, and he had, but the kids hadn't seemed to notice his discomfort, which was somehow its own kind of relief. He was walking back to his truck, parked along the access road, when Ranger slowed. Not a full stop. Not yet. Just that subtle shift in stride that Cole had learned to read the way other people read traffic lights. He didn't reach for anything, didn't speed up or slow down, just let his eyes move. The school's front garden ran along the inside of a low chain-link fence, maybe 4 feet high, more decorative than functional, the kind that said boundary without actually saying barrier. Students in the agricultural program spent their outdoor sessions here, tending raised beds of tomatoes and squash and a row of sunflowers that had gotten taller than anyone planned. One student was still outside, a girl in a manual wheelchair positioned near the fence's midpoint. She had dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, a faded green jacket that looked a size too big, and both hands resting on her wheel rims in the particular way of someone who was ready to move but didn't want to look like they were ready to move. Cole clocked the man at the fence before he clocked anything else. Gray cap, faded dark jacket, navy, maybe black, hard to tell in the afternoon light. He was standing on the public sidewalk just outside the fence line, not touching anything, not doing anything technically wrong. His posture was relaxed in the practiced way of someone who'd thought about what relaxed looked like and was performing it. Cole had stood like that himself, in other countries, for other reasons. "Emma," the man said. His voice was low, conversational. Friendly in the way that someone is friendly when they want you to feel like there's no reason not to be. "Your mom asked me to take you home. She got held up, said to tell you she's sorry." And that was when Ranger stopped. Full stop. Weight forward, ears up and angled. Cole stopped with him. The girl, Emma, didn't respond to the man. She didn't say okay or 1 minute or anything that an 11-year-old might say to an adult who'd just offered an explanation. She pulled her hands inward slightly, fingers curling around the push rims, and rolled backward 3 inches. Just 3 inches. But Cole saw it. He'd spent 12 years as a Navy SEAL and 4 years before that as a BUDS instructor. He'd spent enough time reading people in situations where reading them wrong meant coming home in a box. And he knew, the way you know a thunderstorm before you can name what changed in the air, that this girl was afraid. He walked toward them. Not fast. Not aggressive. Ranger matched his pace without being told. The man looked up when Cole was about 10 yards out, and something shifted in his expression. Too fast to name, but Cole caught it. A micro-recalibration. The smile stayed, but the eyes did the thing eyes do when someone is processing an unexpected variable. "Hey," Cole said. Casual, neighborly. He angled himself so that he was standing slightly between the fence and Emma's position without making it look intentional. "Didn't know they were still letting kids stay out this late. Getting cool." He was talking to the man, but he wasn't looking at the man. He was looking at Emma. She was staring at him with an expression he recognized. The particular look of someone who has been waiting for a long time for someone else to notice what they'd noticed. Equal parts relief and something more fragile underneath it. The part that wasn't sure yet whether to trust. "Help me," she said. 2 words. Almost no volume, barely moved her lips. The man at the fence took a step back. "Just a friend of the family," he said, to nobody in particular, and then he turned and walked toward the road. Not running, not panicking. Walking with that same performed casualness, shoulders relaxed, hands at his sides. The walk of someone who had decided that the cost-benefit had shifted and it was time to be somewhere else. Cole watched him go. Blue sedan. He caught the color and the rough shape before the man got the door open. An older model, mid-size, the rear driver's side light visibly cracked. The car pulled onto the county road heading west and was gone in under 30 seconds. Ranger watched it go, then looked at Cole. Cole looked at Emma. She hadn't moved. Her hands were still on the wheel rims, and her jaw was set in the stubborn way of someone who had decided they were not going to cry about this in front of a stranger, which Cole respected more than he could have put into words. "You okay?" he asked. "No," she said, "but I'm fine." He almost smiled at that. "Those aren't the same thing." "I know." He crouched down so they were closer to eye level, something his old team's combat medic, Torres, had always done when talking to scared civilians in the field. "Get small," Torres used to say. "Big people in body armor talking down at people who are already scared just makes them more scared." Cole had thought it was soft advice at the time. He'd been wrong about a lot of things at 26. "Has he been here before?" Cole asked. Emma looked at him for a moment like she was measuring something. Then she nodded. "Monday, Tuesday. Today makes 3. Same time? Around when we finish in the garden, give or take. Same car?" "Same car." She paused. "The backlight's been broken all 3 days." Cole looked at her. "You remember that?" "I notice things," she said, without any particular pride in it, just a fact. "People don't think I do because—" She gestured at the wheelchair, a small, economical motion. "But I do." He stood back up. "Did you tell anyone?" The shift in her expression was small but complete. The particular shuddering that happens when someone has already answered this question and didn't like where it landed. "I told Ms. Renner on Tuesday," she said. "She said he was probably just a parent waiting for a sibling. I told her he didn't talk to any other kids. She said he was probably just on his phone." A beat. "He didn't have his phone out. Did you tell your mom?" "Mom's been working doubles." Emma's voice didn't change, but something in it flattened slightly. A texture Cole recognized as the particular flatness of a kid who has learned to edit certain conversations before they started, because the people on the receiving end had too much already to carry. "I didn't want to—" She stopped. Started differently. "I mentioned it. She said it was probably fine." Cole nodded. Behind them, the school's side door opened, and a teacher, mid-30s, lanyard, slightly harried, leaned out. "Emma, your mom just called. She's about 15 minutes out. Do you want to wait inside?" Emma looked at Cole. Cole looked at the empty stretch of county road where the blue sedan had been. "Yeah," he said to Emma, not to the teacher. "You should go inside." Emma started turning her chair and then stopped. She looked back at him. "You believe me, don't you?" It wasn't quite a question. "I believe you," he said. She held his gaze for another second, like she was storing the experience somewhere she could find it again later. Then she turned and rolled toward the teacher, her wheels crackling over the pea gravel path with a sound like something small being decided. Cole stood at the fence for another few minutes after they went inside. Ranger sat beside him, not restless, not bored, just present. The wheat fields bent in the wind and straightened again. Cole pulled out his phone and typed a note. Blue sedan, older model, cracked rear driver's side light, heading west on County 14, approx 4:20 p.m. Third consecutive day. Subject engaged with minor at fence, knew her name, left when approached. He looked at what he'd written. Then he went and found a staff member. The assistant principal was a man named Gerald Hooper, which felt like the right name for an assistant principal in rural Nebraska. Solid, slightly old-fashioned, the kind of name that went with beige carpets and a coffee maker in the corner. He listened to Cole with the particular expression of someone being polite, while privately deciding how much of what they were hearing applied to reality. I appreciate you bringing this to our attention, Mr. Maddox. Mr. Maddox. We do take student safety seriously, and I'll certainly have a word with staff about being more attentive during outdoor sessions. A pause. Emma is a wonderful student, very bright, but she does have an active imagination. We've had some situations in the past where she gave me the color and make of the car, Cole said. The cracked taillight, approximate timing, 3 days' worth of observations. Hooper nodded carefully. Right, of course, and that's... She was scared. Cole kept his voice level. I've spent 12 years in situations where I had to read whether someone was scared or just dramatic, and I got pretty good at the difference. That kid was scared. Another careful nod. I hear you, and again, we appreciate... I'm going to make a call to the sheriff's office, Cole said. I just wanted to give you the heads up, not ask permission. Hooper's expression completed its journey from polite to something a bit more careful. Of course, whatever you think is appropriate. Cole thanked him and left. The Millard County Sheriff's substation was a 12-minute drive from Willow Creek. The deputy on duty, a woman named Arias with a coffee cup that said "World's Okayest Sheriff," listened to Cole's account while her pen moved across a notepad. You get a plate? She asked. Partial. The angle wasn't right. First two characters looked like a 7 and either a B or an 8. Description of the subject? Male, I'd put him late 30s to mid 40s. 5'10", maybe 5'11". Average build, gray cap, dark jacket, navy or black. Caucasian. He walked north on the access road before he got to the sedan. Cole paused. He wasn't panicking when he left. He was calibrated, like someone who's done this kind of exit before. Arias looked up from the notepad. Meaning? Meaning he knew exactly how fast to walk so he didn't look like he was running. She held his gaze for a moment. You military? Was. She made a note. We'll do a patrol of the area, log the report, probably have someone call the school tomorrow. It wasn't nothing. It also wasn't much. Cole drove home. That night he sat on his back porch with Ranger and a beer he didn't particularly want, watching the sky go dark over the fields. His neighbor's dog barked twice somewhere across the lot line and then went quiet. He kept thinking about Emma's face when she'd asked, "You believe me, don't you? Not do you believe me? You believe me." The emphasis landing on you because she'd already asked other people and already gotten the answer, and she was checking whether Cole was going to be the same kind of answer or a different one. He picked up his phone and texted Patrice. What do you know about the girl at Willow Creek, Emma? Wheelchair, dark hair. Patrice replied in under 2 minutes because Patrice always replied in under 2 minutes. Emma called her. 6th grade, spina bifida, sharp as a tack. Why? Cole wrote back. She had a situation today at the fence. I talked to Hooper and filed with the sheriff. Just wanted to know who I was dealing with. Patrice. What kind of situation? Cole. A man who knew her name and claimed her mom sent him. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Patrice. Cole. Cole. Yeah. Patrice. Her mom works doubles at the distribution center. She's pickup responsible. Nobody else is listed. Cole set the phone down on the armrest. Ranger shifted and rested his head on Cole's knee, the gray muzzle warm and heavy. The wheat fields were dark now, just sound and wind. Cole sat with the particular stillness of someone who has decided to wait. Not because waiting was comfortable, but because the next move wasn't his to make yet. Then his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He answered. Mr. Maddox? A woman's voice, tired and working to sound controlled. This is Sandra Calder. I'm Emma's mom. She told me what happened today. She told me you were the only person who believed her. A pause. I owe you an apology. She's been trying to tell me something for 3 days, and I keep telling her. Her voice broke, just slightly, the way voices do when adrenaline runs out of road. She's safe, Cole said. I know, she's right here. A breath. She said the man knew her name, and I started thinking about how that's even possible. She doesn't know him. We don't know him. How does he know her name? Cole had been thinking about that too. He just hadn't wanted to arrive at the answer until he had to. I'll be at the school tomorrow morning, he said, before classes. A long pause. Okay, Sandra Calder said. Okay, thank you. Cole ended the call and looked at Ranger. The dog looked back. We're going back tomorrow, Cole said. Ranger's tail moved once, in acknowledgement of the obvious. Cole picked up his beer, looked at it, set it down again. Somewhere in the school's security footage, if Willow Creek even had security cameras pointed at the right angles, which was not guaranteed, there might be 3 days' worth of the blue sedan, 3 days of the man in the gray cap, 3 days of the particular careful way someone circles something they're planning to take. And somewhere between the cracked taillight and the partial plate and the highway heading west, there was a thread. Cole intended to follow it, but it was what Emma had said that kept circling back, the thing that wouldn't sit quietly in the back of his mind where he'd tried to leave it. He didn't talk to any other kids, just her. The man had come 3 days running, and he'd had eyes for exactly one child at Willow Creek Learning Center, a girl in a wheelchair who people had spent her whole life assuming couldn't handle the full version of anything. He'd decided she was an easy target. Cole stared out at the dark fields. He'd been wrong about a lot of things in his life, but on this one, Cole was already certain. That man had made the worst miscalculation of his life the moment he'd looked at Emma Calder and seen something easy. Cole was at Willow Creek by 7:45 the next morning. The school didn't open for students until 8:30, but the custodial staff came in early, and Cole had learned from 12 years of operating in environments where he didn't belong, that the people who came in early were almost always more useful than the people who ran the meetings. The custodian was a heavy-set man named Walt, who wore a Husker's cap and had the particular squint of someone who'd spent a lot of years outdoors before taking an indoor job. He let Cole in through the side entrance without much ceremony, mostly because Ranger was with him, and Walt had a soft spot for dogs that he didn't bother hiding. You the vet who comes in for the garden program? Walt asked. Yeah. Patrice vouched for you. He held the door. She called me this morning, said to let you look at the cameras. Cole nodded. Appreciate it. Camera system's mostly decorative, Walt said, which was not encouraging. Principal had it installed 3 years ago after a budget meeting where someone brought up liability. 2 cameras out front, one at the rear entrance, one inside the gym. The one covering the main parking lot has been pointing about 20 degrees too far left since February. I've put in 3 work orders. Who handles the work orders? Walt gave him a look that answered the question completely without using any words. They walked to a small utility room near the main office where a monitor sat on a metal shelf beside a router with a blinking amber light and a box of dry erase markers that had no business being there. The system was 4-channel, older model, the kind that recorded in a compressed format that made everything look like it was happening underwater. Cole sat down and started going back through the footage. It took him 40 minutes to find what he was looking for, and when he found it, he made himself go back and watch it 3 more times before he said anything. The angle was bad. Walt hadn't been wrong about that. The camera covered the front entrance and the left side of the parking lot, which meant the access road along the garden fence was partially in frame but not centered. What Cole could see, if he knew what he was looking at, was the edge of the county road and a slice of the sidewalk running parallel to the garden fence. Monday. The blue sedan appeared at the edge of frame at 4:11 p.m. and left at 4:26. 15 minutes. A figure in a gray cap was visible at the fence for approximately 8 of those 15 minutes. Tuesday. The sedan was back at 4:08, left at 4:31, 23 minutes. The figure stayed at the fence longer. Wednesday. Yesterday. The sedan arrived at 4:14, left at 4:19, 5 minutes. Less time than either previous visit, because Cole had walked over. He sat back in the chair and looked at the monitor. Walt was leaning against the door frame, arms crossed. Anything? 3 days? Same car? Same time window. Cole pulled out his phone and photographed the monitor during each timestamp. Poor quality, but something. The angle doesn't give me a plate. Told you. Can you see which direction he comes from on Monday before he parks? Walt looked at the screen. That far left is out of frame. He just appears. Cole nodded. He photographed the timestamps anyway. Then he went back to Wednesday's footage, to the moment he had walked over, and watched the figure at the fence straighten and move away. Watched the specific tempo of it, unhurried, measured, the walk of someone who had decided to leave rather than someone who had been startled into leaving. There was a difference. Cole had spent enough time watching people make that choice under pressure to know it. This man hadn't panicked. He'd recalculated. That bothered Cole more than panic would have. Sandra Calder arrived at 8:15, 10 minutes before the school day started. She was a woman in her late 30s who looked like she'd been running at 90% capacity for long enough that she'd stopped noticing the cost of it. Dark circles worn matter-of-factly, hair pulled back the way you pull it back when appearance is a problem you've deprioritized. She worked distribution, Cole knew. Doubles. The kind of schedule that ate through a person quietly, from the inside. Emma was with her, already in her jacket, her wheelchair bag, a canvas pack hooked over the back handles, clearly visible with a small laminated card attached to the outside zipper. Cole's eyes went to the card immediately. It was cheerful. Purple background printed in a large, clean font. Emma Calder, grade 6. Willow Creek Learning Center. Allergies. Penicillin. Emergency contact, Sandra Calder. Phone number redacted on the card itself, but the name was there, the school was there, and the grade was there. The card was meant to help people help Emma in an emergency. A medical ID of sorts, attached to a visible location on her mobility equipment, so that teachers, aides, or first responders could access basic information immediately. It was a reasonable thing. It was also, Cole now understood, exactly how the man in the gray cap had learned her name. He hadn't stalked her from a distance. He hadn't done research. He'd walked past a school garden where a girl in a wheelchair was tending tomatoes, read the card on her bag from the sidewalk, and filed the information away. Emma, to her credit, saw him see it and understood immediately. That's how he knew, she said. Not a question. Sandra Calder looked at the card, looked at Cole. Something moved across her face. Not quite guilt, not quite anger. Somewhere between the two, that particular look of a parent who has done everything they could think to do and discovered that doing everything still leaves gaps. I attached that when she started 6th grade, Sandra said. The school recommended it. It's a standard accommodation, Cole said, and he meant it. He wasn't pointing a finger. The intent is right. The problem is, it's visible from the road. Sandra pressed her lips together and looked at the card for a moment. Then she reached over and unclipped it from Emma's bag in one clean motion and put it in her own pocket. Done, she said. Gerald Hooper arrived at 8:26, which was slightly before the school day technically began, which was itself slightly unusual, and told Cole that Patrice had made a phone call the previous evening. Hooper was wearing a different tie than yesterday. This one had a pattern of small blue diamonds, and he had the expression of someone who had rethought some things overnight. Mr. Maddox, he said. Mrs. Calder. He looked at the monitor in the utility room, which Cole had left paused on Tuesday's footage showing the figure at the fence. Oh. 3 consecutive days, Cole said. Same vehicle. He stayed longer each visit until yesterday when I walked over. I see. Hooper looked at the screen for a moment. I owe Emma an apology. He said it directly to Emma, not to the room, which was the right call. I should have taken this more seriously on Tuesday. Emma looked at him steadily. Yeah, she said, you should have. It landed without venom, which made it land harder. Hooper absorbed it and nodded. I'm going to call the sheriff's office this morning, he said. Get someone out here to look at the footage officially. I already filed a report yesterday, Cole said. Deputy Arias. You should reference that case number when you call. Keeps it in one file rather than 2. Hooper wrote it down. The school day was starting outside. Cole could hear buses pulling in, the particular compressed chaos of 200 kids arriving over a 20-minute window. Hooper excused himself to manage the opening. Sandra walked Emma to her homeroom, and Cole stayed in the utility room with the monitor and his phone, and a thought he couldn't quite shake. He went back through Monday's footage one more time. The figure appeared at 4:11. 8 minutes at the fence. Cole tracked the visible portion of the sidewalk backward from where the man had been standing, toward the left edge of the frame. There, before the sedan was parked. A shadow or the edge of one, moving along the fence line before stopping. He hadn't driven up and parked and walked to the fence. He'd walked the fence first, then gone back to the car, like he was checking angles. Cole stared at the frozen image on the monitor for a long time. Then he texted Arias at the sheriff's office. "I'm at Willow Creek. School is calling you this morning about the camera footage. I found something on Monday's recording you should see. Can you come by?" She replied, "Shift starts at 9. Be there by 9:30. Cole went outside to find Sandra Calder before she left for work. He found her in the parking lot, standing beside a sedan that had seen better days but was clearly maintained as well as the budget allowed. She was on her phone, her back to him, and he caught the end of what she was saying before she heard him approach and turned. "Just tell them I'll be 40 minutes late. I'll make it up on Friday, I promise." She saw Cole and held up one finger. "I have to go. Okay. Okay, bye." She lowered the phone. "Sorry. Work." "You're going to be late because of this," Cole said. "Yeah, well." She tucked the phone into her jacket pocket. "It's fine." "Is it?" "No." She said it without self-pity. "But it's what it is." She looked at him, a direct, tired look that reminded him of the look his mother used to give when she'd run out of energy for everything except honesty. "Can I ask you something?" "Yeah." "Why are you doing this? You don't know us. You don't owe Emma anything." Cole thought about how to answer that. He settled on the true version. "She asked for help and people didn't listen. That bothers me." Sandra looked at him for a moment. "She said you crouched down when you talked to her." "Old habit." She noticed. A pause. "Emma notices everything. She always has. I used to think it was a quirk when she was little, the way she'd catalog things, remember details. Her teachers call it a coping mechanism." Sandra's jaw tightened slightly. "Like it's a symptom rather than a skill." Cole didn't say anything. "She told me," Sandra continued, "that he had mud on the lower half of the driver's door. Not the passenger side, just the driver's side." Cole had not noticed that. He filed it away. "That's useful," he said. "To you, maybe. To Ms. Renner, it was—" Sandra stopped. Started differently. "Emma goes to that garden because it's the one place at this school where nobody treats her like she might break. She grows things. She has to problem-solve every single bed because the design isn't quite right for her reach. And she figured out modifications herself without telling anyone. She just did it." Something crossed Sandra's face that Cole recognized as fierce, involuntary pride. "And then she comes home and tells me someone's been watching her and Her voice dropped. "I told her it was probably fine." "You were tired," Cole said. "That doesn't make it okay." "No, but it makes it human." Sandra looked at him for a moment, then away, across the school parking lot. A bus was pulling out. A teacher was directing a group of kids with the particular arm gestures of someone who'd been doing it long enough that they'd stopped thinking about the gestures. "She's not fragile," Sandra said. "People look at the chair and they see fragile. She's the toughest person I know, and I include adults in that comparison." "I know," Cole said. "I saw her face when she asked me if I believed her." Sandra nodded slowly. "What happens now?" "Sheriff's deputy is coming at 9:30 to look at the footage. The school is tightening up their outdoor supervision protocol. I'm going to be here when the deputy arrives, and I'll follow up with her about whether the plate search produces anything. And if it doesn't?" Cole looked at her steadily. "Then we make sure that when he comes back, and my read is that he will come back, there's nothing easy waiting for him." Sandra held his gaze. Then she nodded, got in her car, and drove toward a shift she was already late for. Ranger sat beside Cole in the parking lot and watched the sedan go. The morning was cold and flat, and the wheat fields were pale in the early light. Cole went back inside to wait for Arias. Deputy Arias arrived at 9:22, which was 8 minutes earlier than she'd said, which told Cole she'd thought about it on the drive in and arrived at some of the same conclusions he had. She had a notepad and a tablet, and the coffee cup was different today. This one said Nebraska. The good life with the ironic detachment of someone who'd received it as a gift and kept using it anyway. She watched all 3 days of footage without saying anything. Cole stood beside her and let her watch. When she got to the part on Monday where the figure walked the fence line before going back to the car, she stopped the playback. "He's checking sight lines," she said. "That's what I thought. Not the behavior of someone who happens to be waiting nearby." She made a note. The partial plate you gave us yesterday. We ran the parameters. 7B and 7.8 in that model year and color range comes back to 11 vehicles registered in the county and surrounding 3 counties. 4 of those are eliminated by the damaged taillight description. We can pull registration photos, and most have inspection records that would flag an unreported damage condition. That leaves 7. Can you narrow by direction of travel? He headed west on County 14. That gives us a rough radius. She tapped something on her tablet. It's not nothing. It's also not enough to knock on doors. We'd need something more specific. She looked at Cole. The mud on the driver's door, that's interesting. You know where the mud's from? I don't. Emma Calder observed it. She described it as along the lower edge of the driver's door only, not the passenger side. Arias looked at him. The kid told you that. She told her mother. Her mother told me. And nobody thought to take a statement from the kid directly. Hooper thought she had an active imagination. Arias made the kind of face that people make when they are being professional about something that deserves a less professional response. I'd like to talk to Emma, she said. If her mother consents. I'll get you Sandra Calder's number. They stepped out of the utility room and into the corridor, which was now full of the mid-morning sounds of a school in motion. Muffled voices, a locker closing somewhere. The specific squeak of rubber soles on linoleum. Ranger walked at Cole's heel, patient and oblivious to the building around him. Hooper was waiting for them near the main office with the expression of a man who had spent the morning revising his opinion of several things. He'd clearly been on the phone. There was a legal pad on the reception desk with a list of notes in handwriting that suggested haste. I've contacted the district office, he said. They're sending someone this afternoon for a security review. And I've reached out to the other 2 elementary schools in the district to give them a heads up. Good, Arias said. I've also... Hooper paused. He looked at Cole, then at Arias, with the expression of someone delivering information they wished they didn't have. I've been getting some calls this morning from parents. Cole waited. Word got around last night, the way word does in small communities, that there had been an incident at the school. Some parents are concerned about the response. Some of them are... Another pause. A few of them feel that the situation has been handled in a way that's alarmist, that bringing in law enforcement and making changes to the program is an overreaction based on the observations of... He stopped. Based on the observations of a child in a wheelchair, Cole said flatly. Hooper had the decency not to look away. That's not how they phrased it, but that's what they meant. A silence. Some of them are questioning whether... Hooper straightened his tie. The small blue diamonds shifted. There are parents who feel that you, specifically, Mr. Maddox, may have created a situation that didn't require the level of response it received. That a stranger talking to a child near a school fence is not necessarily... He knew her name, Cole said. He came back 3 days in a row. He walked the fence line to check his sight lines before he parked. He kept his voice level. Tell me which part of that isn't a situation. Hooper was quiet for a moment. I'm not arguing with you, he said finally. I'm telling you what I'm hearing. I know the difference, Cole said. How many parents called? 4. How many sent their kids to school today without calling anyone? A longer silence. The other 196, Hooper said quietly. Arias cleared her throat, professionally. The footage speaks for itself, she said. Whatever the community's read on it, we have documented evidence of a subject making contact with a minor on 3 consecutive days, demonstrating advanced knowledge of the child's name and showing behavioral patterns consistent with surveillance. That's the record. That's what we're working from. She looked at Hooper. The school's response is appropriate. I'd encourage you to hold that line. Hooper nodded. He looked relieved to have someone else's authority to stand behind, which Cole understood even if it frustrated him slightly. They were walking toward the exit when Cole's phone buzzed. Unknown number, Nebraska area code. He almost let it go to voicemail. Then something made him answer. Maddox. Silence for a moment. Then a voice. Male, unhurried, the particular even quality of someone who is working to sound relaxed. You should teach your dog to mind its own business. Cole stopped walking. Arias was 3 steps ahead of him and turned at the change in his gait. He held up one finger and she went still. Who is this? Cole said. Somebody who was just driving by, the voice said. Don't read too much into it.
Which road? Cole said. A pause. You're sharper than you look, the man said, and he sounded almost amused by it, in the careful way that people are amused when they want you to think they're not rattled. Tell the school to relax. Nothing happened. What's your name? Cole said. The line went dead. Cole stood in the corridor of Willow Creek Learning Center with his phone at his side and Ranger looking up at him and Arias 3 feet away, reading his face with the professional attention of someone who had gotten very good at reading faces. That was him, Cole said. You're sure? He referenced the dog. Arias's hand was already moving toward her radio. You get a read on the voice? Male, mid-range, no strong regional accent, Midwest general, controlled, not panicking. Cole looked at his phone. He called from an unknown number, but he called me, which means he got my number from somewhere, or he was close enough yesterday to see me clearly enough to... He stopped. To what? My truck, Cole said. I had a Fraternal Order of Police Supporter decal on the rear window from my neighbor. She put it on as a joke 3 years ago, and I never took it off. It's got a partial phone number format. He was already walking toward the exit. If he was at this school yesterday and got a good look at my truck, Cole. Arias's voice stopped him. If he called you, he made a mistake. Unknown numbers still touch cell towers. Give me your phone. Cole handed it over. She photographed the call log. Made a call of her own, stepping away, her voice dropping into the shorthand of someone talking to dispatch. Cole stood in the school's front entrance with Ranger and looked out through the glass doors at the parking lot and the county road beyond it and the flat Nebraska sky over all of it. The wheat fields bent and straightened. He was close. Cole could feel it the way he used to feel it in the field. That particular tightening of a situation, the sense of a perimeter beginning to close. The man had made contact. He'd tried to rattle Cole, which meant Cole had rattled him first. People who were genuinely unbothered didn't call strangers to tell them to relax. But the call also meant something else, something Cole sat with and didn't like. The man knew who Cole was, or knew enough to find out. He'd identified the truck. He'd gotten a number somehow. He was operational in a way that suggested practice. This wasn't someone acting on impulse. Cole turned it over in his mind, the same way he used to work an intelligence report, stripping away the noise and looking at what the facts actually said. 3 days of observation at a consistent time window, advanced reconnaissance of sightlines, specific selection of a target, a child with a visible identification card, visible routine, and visible vulnerability. No criminal record flagged on the plate search so far, which either meant he was clean or meant he'd never been caught. And now a phone call designed to sound casual while communicating something very specific. I see you. I know who you are. Back off. Cole thought about Emma's face when she'd said, "You believe me." He thought about the card on the wheelchair bag, purple and cheerful, broadcasting her name to anyone who walked past. He thought about Walt's 3 unresolved work orders for a camera that had been pointing at the wrong angle since February. He thought about Hooper's carefully neutral voice saying some parents feel this may be an overreaction. He looked down at Ranger. The dog looked back at him with the steady, uncomplicated attention of an animal who had never once in his working life made the mistake of waiting for someone else to confirm what he already knew. "Yeah," Cole said quietly. "Me too." Arias came back. Her expression had shifted, tighter, more focused, the switch from routine report to active case. "Tower data is going to take a few hours," she said, "but the number pinged a cell tower on the west side of the county this morning. That overlaps with our 7-vehicle shortlist." "How much overlap?" "Enough to pull 3 of them to the top." She handed Cole his phone back. "I'm going to need you to write a formal statement about the call. Everything he said, word for word, as close as you can get it." "I can do that now." "Also," she paused, "the school should know he made contact with you. It changes the risk level." "I know." "And Cole," she looked at him with the particular directness of someone who wants to make sure the next thing lands. "You're a civilian. Whatever this guy said, whatever you think you know about him, you're not running point on an operation here. I know that too." "Do you?" Cole looked at her steadily. "I know how to support a law enforcement action without getting in the way of it," he said. "I've done it before. Different context, same principle." Arias held his gaze for a moment, measuring something. Then she nodded. A single,
economic nod that said she'd decided to take him at his word and would revise that decision if necessary. They walked back to find Hooper. He was in the main office, and his expression when Cole told him about the call was the expression of a man watching a door he thought was closed swing open. "He called you," Hooper said, "this morning after the sheriff's deputy arrived." Hooper sat down heavily in his desk chair. The legal pad with his notes was in front of him. He looked at it for a moment, then pushed it aside. "The parents who called me this morning," he said, "the ones who said this was an overreaction." "What about them?" "I'm going to have to call them back." He straightened the small blue diamonds of his tie. "And tell them they were wrong." Cole didn't say anything to that. Hooper didn't need him to. Outside, through the window of the main office, Cole could see the garden along the east fence. The raised beds with their tomato plants and the row of sunflowers that had gotten too tall, and the empty wheelchair path that wound between them. The spot near the fence where Emma had been sitting yesterday was visible from here. Visible from the county road. Visible from the sidewalk. Visible from wherever a man in a gray cap decided to stop and look. Cole made a mental note of the sight lines, counted the distance from the road to the garden beds. Measured, in his head, the gap between where adults typically stood during outdoor supervision and where the fence line ran. 12 years of looking at ground and thinking about how someone might use it against you left marks on the way you saw spaces. It wasn't always useful. Right now it was. He pulled out his phone and opened his notes. He started writing down what he knew, in the order he knew it, the way he used to write field assessments. Facts first, then inferences clearly labeled as inferences, then questions. It was a habit from his team leader days that he'd never been able to fully put down, like a tool that had gotten welded to his hand. Fact. The subject had selected Emma specifically. Fact. He had returned 3 times with increasing dwell time, then shorter on the third when disrupted. Fact. He had called Cole's phone this morning after the law enforcement response increased. Inference. The call was a deterrence attempt, not a threat. Inference. A deterrence attempt meant he still considered the target viable. Question. Were there other schools? Other children? He stopped writing. Other schools. He hadn't asked areas whether the 3 schools Hooper had warned this morning had been asked to check their own camera footage for the blue sedan. It was possible she'd done it already. It was also possible, in the friction of the morning, that it had slipped through a gap. He found Arias in the parking lot, finishing a call. "The other 2 elementary schools in the district," Cole said. "Has anyone asked them to pull their camera footage for the last 2 weeks?" Arias looked at him. "Specifically," Cole said, "looking for a blue sedan with a cracked rear driver's side light." A pause. "I'll make those calls in the next hour," she said. Cole nodded. He walked back to his truck. Ranger jumped into the cab and settled on the passenger seat with the organized efficiency of an animal who had done this 10,000 times. Cole sat behind the wheel and didn't start the engine for a minute, maybe 2. The school was going to change its procedures. The sheriff's office was actively working the case. The footage was documented. The phone call was logged. It was more than he'd had 24 hours ago. And yet the shape of the thing, the careful, practiced shape of it, wouldn't settle. He thought about the fence walk on Monday, the sightline check, the calibrated exit on Wednesday, the phone call that was designed to sound unbothered by someone who was very much bothered, tell the school to relax. Nothing happened. Cole turned the key. The engine caught. He put the truck in reverse, then stopped. Because sitting at the far end of the school's parking lot, engine off, parked in a spot half screened by an overgrown hedge that the school groundskeeping hadn't gotten to yet, was a blue sedan. Cracked rear driver's side light. Cole's hand moved to his phone. Ranger lifted his head and looked at the sedan and then at Cole, and his ears came up. "I see it," Cole said. He was already dialing Arias. Arias picked up on the second ring. "He's here," Cole said. Blue sedan, cracked rear driver's side light, parked at the far end of the school lot, half behind the hedge on the east side. A half-second pause. "You're sure it's the same vehicle? Same damage profile, same color, same model year approximate. He's in the lot, Arias. He came back while we were inside." "Don't approach. Do not approach the vehicle. I'm 4 minutes out." "Copy." He put the phone on the seat and sat very still. The sedan hadn't moved. Engine off, as far as he could tell. No exhaust in the cold morning air, no running lights.
just sitting there behind the partial screen of the overgrown hedge, like something that had decided to wait and see what happened next. Cole took his hand off the door handle. It cost him something to do that. 12 years of training had wired him toward closing distance on a threat, and everything in his body wanted to get out of the truck and move toward that car with Ranger at his side and find out right now exactly who was sitting in it. But Arias had said 4 minutes, and 4 minutes was 4 minutes, and he was a civilian in a school parking lot, and the worst thing he could do right now was give this man a reason to drive away before law enforcement arrived. So he sat. He kept his eyes on the sedan in a way that looked, from the outside, like he was looking at his phone. He used his peripheral vision, an old surveillance habit. Direct eye contact at distance registers in the human nervous system in ways people can't always name, but always feel. Ranger was watching the sedan directly, because Ranger had never learned the peripheral vision trick and didn't need it. 2 minutes passed. Cole counted them. The sedan's engine turned over.
Cole's hand found the door handle again. "Don't," he said to himself, the way he used to say it to junior operators who were about to do something tactically stupid because they were 23 and certain. He left the handle alone. The sedan rolled forward. Not fast, not slow. It moved through the lot at the pace of someone navigating a parking lot normally. The performed normalcy again, the same calibration Cole had seen in the footage. It reached the lot exit and turned right onto the access road and picked up speed heading east, away from Willow Creek. Cole exhaled. He started his truck and pulled to the lot exit and stopped. He didn't follow. He watched the sedan's taillights. The right one intact, the left one broken, shedding a partial red glow, until it cleared the first bend in the county road and was gone. Arias's cruiser came from the west 40 seconds later. Lights on, no siren. She pulled alongside Cole's truck. He rolled down his window. "East on the access road," he said before she could ask. "Maybe 90 seconds ago. He moved when the engine turned over. I think he made me watching him." "Description again?" "Same as everything I've already told you. Older model sedan, mid-size, blue, cracked left rear light. I couldn't see the driver from this angle." Arias was already on her radio. Cole caught fragments, plate query, direction of travel, unit availability, before she lowered it and looked at him. "There's a patrol unit 2 miles east. They'll try to intercept." She paused. "He was in the lot. For at least as long as we were inside, maybe longer." She looked at the hedge. "He had a view of the main entrance from there. And the east garden. And my truck." Arias was quiet for a moment in the particular way of someone adding things up. "He came back to watch the response," she said. It wasn't a question. "That's my read," Cole said. "He wanted to see how seriously we were taking it. And he saw a sheriff's vehicle. And he called me this morning, which means he was already rattled before he came back. Coming back after that?" Cole stopped, working it. "He needed to see it. Whatever's driving him, it's strong enough to override the obvious risk of returning to a location he knows has been flagged." Arias looked at him steadily. "You've done threat assessment before." "I've done a lot of things before." She didn't push it. She put the cruiser in drive. "I'll let you know what the intercept turns up. Stay available." "I'm not going anywhere." She pulled out and headed east, and Cole watched her go, and then sat in his truck at the edge of the school parking lot for a moment that stretched longer than it should have. He thought about the word intercept. He thought about the 2 miles between Arias's cruiser and wherever the sedan was right now. He thought about a patrol unit that might or might not have gotten the description clearly on the first transmission on a county road with spotty radio coverage, looking for a mid-size blue sedan in a state where mid-size blue sedans were not exactly rare. He put his truck in drive and went home to wait. It was the hardest thing he'd done all week. The call from Arias came at 11:40. "We didn't get him," she said. "Patrol unit found the county road clear. He either turned off before they reached him or he knew the road and made a turn we don't have covered," Cole said. "Yeah." A pause. "We're pulling traffic camera footage from the intersection at Route 9 and County 14. That's the most likely turn. Should have something by this afternoon. And the tower data from this morning's call? Still processing. Cell carrier moves at its own speed." Another pause, heavier. "Cole, I want to be straight with you. We have documented suspicious behavior, we have a witness account, and we have a call log. What we don't have yet is an identifiable subject. The camera quality isn't going to give us facial recognition. The plate's partial, without a stop, without an intercept, without... I know, Cole said. I'm not dropping this. I know that too. I just want you to understand where the case is right now. It's thin, Cole said. It's real, but it's thin. Yeah. He thanked her and ended the call. He made coffee he didn't drink and sat at his kitchen table with Ranger under his feet and his phone on the table and the notes he'd been keeping open on the screen. He read through them twice. Then he started adding to the questions column. Why Emma specifically at Willow Creek and not another student at another school? If he has notes on multiple children, which we don't know yet, does Emma's name appear, or was she the first selection? The mud on the driver's door, one side only, a rural road, a field access, a specific location. Where does someone pick up one-sided mud on a car? He sat with the mud question for a while. One-sided mud accumulation happened when a car drove close to a soft shoulder or a ditch edge on the driver's side. It happened on narrow rural roads where you had to pull over partially to let another vehicle pass. It happened on unpaved access tracks where the car straddled the edge of the solid surface. It didn't happen in town. It happened in the country. Cole looked at the map on his phone. He pulled up the area around Willow Creek and looked at the roads west of the school, the direction the sedan had headed on Wednesday afternoon. There were 3 unpaved access roads within 4 miles, all of them cutting through wheat fields toward property that was either agricultural or residential. Cole wasn't a detective. He knew that. He knew the difference between pattern recognition and a warrant, between an educated guess and probable cause. But he wrote the 3 road names down anyway. His phone buzzed. Sandra called her. Emma's asking about you, she said. Is she okay? She's fine. She's at school. She asked her aide if you were coming back today. A pause. Are you? This afternoon, Cole said. I want to be there when outdoor time starts. Silence for a moment. He came back, Sandra said. It wasn't a question. Cole hesitated, and that half-second told her what she needed to know. Cole. Her voice had changed, quieter, more controlled, the particular quietness of a person who is managing something very large in a very small space. Tell me. He was in the parking lot this morning. He left before the deputy could intercept. There's an active effort to locate the vehicle. He kept his voice level and factual, the way he'd been trained to deliver information that mattered. The school is safe. Emma is in class. The situation is being handled. A long pause. She's not going to stop coming to school, Sandra said. I know. She worked 6 months to get that spot in the garden program. 6 months of waiting lists and assessments, and Sandra's breath caught, and she steadied it. She's not going to stop coming because some man decided to make her afraid. I won't let that be what this is. It won't be, Cole said. He meant it. He wasn't sure yet how he was going to make it true, but he meant it. I'll be there at 3:15, he said, before the afternoon garden session. Sandra said okay, and he could hear in the word everything she wasn't saying, the whole weight of it. And then she hung up and Cole sat with the quiet of his kitchen for another long moment before he picked up his keys. He drove back to Willow Creek by way of the West County roads, not the direct route. He told himself it was because he wanted to see the area, which was true. He also told himself he wasn't doing anything that could be characterized as freelance investigation, which was less true. He drove slowly along the first unpaved access road, a half-mile track between 2 planted fields. No structures, no parked vehicles. The surface was packed enough that a car could navigate it without getting stuck, and the edges were soft enough after recent rain that a car straddling the edge would pick up exactly the kind of one-sided mud Emma had described. He didn't stop. He drove through and back out to the county road. The second access road was gated. Padlock, private property sign, agricultural equipment behind the gate. He noted it and kept moving. The third was different. It wasn't unpaved. It was an old oil and chip road that had degraded over the years to something closer to gravel in the middle and soft-packed dirt on the sides, running about 3/4 of a mile to a cluster of property that Cole could see from the road. A house, what looked like a detached garage, and a structure that might have been a second outbuilding, all set back from the road and partially screened by a windbreak of mature trees. There was no blue sedan in the visible driveway. Cole drove past at normal speed without slowing, because slowing would be visible and visible would be a problem. He noted the mailbox number at the road's junction with County 14, then drove another mile before pulling off and opening his phone's map. He searched the address. County tax records were public in Nebraska. He found the parcel in under 2 minutes. 8 acres, residential, owned by a trust with a name he didn't recognize, which meant nothing or meant something. He wrote it down. He sat there for a moment. Then he called Arias and gave her the address without explaining exactly how he'd found it and without claiming it was definitely anything. He said he'd been driving the area west of the school and the property matched the general profile, accessible from the county road, rural, within 5 miles of Willow Creek, oil chip road with degraded edges that would produce one-sided mud splash. Arias was quiet for a moment after he finished. "You want to tell me you were just driving around," she said. "I was driving around." Cole. "I didn't stop. I didn't approach. I drove past at normal speed and looked at what was there." Another pause. Longer. "The parcel's owned by a trust, you said." "That's what the public record shows. Those get set up for a lot of reasons. Most of them normal." A long breath. "I'll run the trust name and cross-reference with the registered vehicle list. If the overlap exists, I can apply for a drive-by check." "That's all I'm suggesting." "Is it?" "Yes," Cole said firmly, because he needed it to be. "Stay at the school this afternoon," Arias said. "Be visible. If this guy is watching the response, let him see continuity. Don't give him the impression that we've moved focus somewhere else." It was good tactical thinking. Cole told her so and meant it. He drove to Willow Creek. Emma was waiting for him near the garden, which surprised him. Not the fact of it, but the specific way of it. She wasn't near the fence. She'd positioned her wheelchair near the center of the garden path, well back from the road, between 2 raised beds of tomato plants that still had green fruit on them despite the cooling temperatures. She was wearing a different jacket today, heavier, and she had a pair of garden gloves on the bag hook behind her left handle. She looked at him the way kids look at adults when they're deciding whether the adult showed up because they said they would or because they meant it. "You came back," she said. "Said I would." People say things. She said it without accusation, just as a known fact about the world. Cole sat on the low edge of one of the raised beds. He'd learned the first time he came to the program that Emma preferred conversations that didn't require her to look up, and the raised beds were at exactly the right height for a seated adult to be roughly level. "How was school?" "Fine. We had a sub in math who didn't know how to work the projector. I told him how, and he looked surprised." "People don't expect you to know things." "People expect me to need things," Emma said. "It's not the same." She pulled her gloves on with practiced efficiency. "Ms. Renner apologized to me today." "Good." "She said she should have listened. She used the word precious, and I hate that word." Emma's expression did something complicated. "I don't want to be precious. I want to be right." "You were right," Cole said. "I know." She reached out and checked the base of the nearest tomato plant, pressing 2 fingers into the soil the way someone checks temperature. Automatic, competent. "He came back this morning." Cole looked at her. "What makes you say that?" She glanced at him sideways. "You called the deputy from the parking lot. Miss Patterson saw you from the office window. She told the aide. The aide didn't tell me, but I was right there." A pause. "I was in the parking lot, wasn't he?" Cole made a decision. "Yes." Emma was quiet for a moment, her hands still in the soil around the tomato plant. Then she said, "Did they catch him?" "Not yet." She nodded. A small, specific nod. The kind that meant I expected that rather than I'm okay with it. "He's going to come back again," she said. "Probably. Because it didn't work yet. Whatever he's trying to do." Cole looked at her. "Emma, I want to ask you something, and I need you to think about it carefully." She turned to face him fully. "The card on your bag," Cole said. "Before your mom took it off. How long had it been there?" "Since September, start of the school year." "Did you ever take it off? Leave it at home?" Emma thought about it with the genuine consideration of someone who actually takes questions seriously. "No, Mom puts it on every morning. It's part of the routine." A pause. "Why?" "I'm trying to understand how he knew to come to this school and not another one." Emma was quiet. She turned back to the tomato plant and then turned back to Cole. He was here before September, she said. Cole went very still. Emma's eyes were focused on something middle distance, the look of someone running memory. There's a farmer's market on the last slowly. The school opens its garden to the community and we sell produce, tomatoes, squash, herbs. It's a fundraiser. She paused. I was here because I help run the herb table. I'm out front for most of it. Was the card on your bag? We use name tags at the market. She touched her jacket lapel. Stick-on ones with the school name. I had one on. Her voice had gone quieter. He could have been there. I didn't see him. But there are a lot of people at the market, and I was busy. Cole looked at the garden around them. The raised beds, the path, the accessible design that put wheelchair users in the most visible position along the fence line. Visible from the road. Visible at the market. A cheerful community event that brought the public onto school grounds and gave a prepared person a low-risk opportunity to identify candidates and attach names to faces. He'd done enough pre-operation reconnaissance in enough places to know what that looked like from the other side. I need you to tell Deputy Arias about the market, Cole said. Everything you just told me. Emma nodded. Can you do that? Yes. She pulled her hands back from the soil and stripped the garden gloves off. I need to tell her something else, too. Cole waited. Emma reached into the canvas bag on the back of her wheelchair. She pulled out a folded piece of paper, torn at one edge, the kind of tear that came from pulling something off a pad or out of a tight space. She held it out to Cole. Walt found this near the garden entrance this morning, she said. He gave it to me because he didn't know who else to give it to. I think he thought it was litter. She paused. It's not litter. Cole unfolded it. It was a parking receipt. The small kind that comes from a lot with a ticket dispenser, a few lines of thermal print. The date was 3 days ago. The lot name was partially cut off by the tear, but Cole could read enough. Creek Elam, and below it, a timestamp, and below that, a partial address. And in the corner of the receipt, in blue ballpoint pen, someone had written 2 words and a number. Wed Pickup. 4:10. Cole stared at the receipt. Wednesday. 4:10 p.m. Pickup. A note to himself. A reminder. He'd written it on the receipt because it was what he had in his hand. And then he dropped it, or it had fallen, near the garden entrance where he'd walked the fence line on Monday. It had been sitting there for 3 days, in the damp near the hedge base, until Walt found it this morning. Cole folded it carefully and did not hand it back. You shouldn't have touched this, he said. I know, Emma said, but Walt touched it first and then gave it to me, and I'd already touched it before I realized what it was. She met his eyes. What does it say? He told her. Emma sat with that for a moment. Her jaw was set. Her hands were still in her lap, very controlled. He wrote a reminder, she said, to pick me up. It looks that way. He was going to try again on Wednesday. He was planning to. But I saw him on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and told people. Her voice didn't waver, but something in it sharpened. I told people before Wednesday. You did, Cole said. They sat with that for a moment in the pale afternoon light with the wheat fields moving quietly in all directions and the sound of other students somewhere deeper in the building. Emma said, He was going to try to take me. We don't know exactly. Cole. She looked at him directly, with the particular steadiness of a child who has had to grow up in some ways faster than she should have. I'm 11. I know what that means. Cole looked at her. He didn't soften it. Yeah, he was going to try. Emma turned back to the garden. She picked up her gloves again and put them on. She pressed her hands into the soil around the base of the tomato plant and worked carefully, deliberately, the way someone works when they need their hands to be doing something concrete while their mind processes something very large. He picked me because of the chair, she said. Probably. Because he thought I couldn't run. Yes. He was wrong about what I could do. She didn't look up from the soil. He was wrong about a lot of things. Cole didn't say anything. He watched her work. After a moment, she sat back and looked at what she'd done. A small, tidy area around the plant's base. The soil turned just enough to aerate it without disturbing the roots. I need to call Deputy Arias now, Emma said. I'll get her number. I have it. She gave it to Mom. Emma pulled off the gloves again. Cole. Yeah. Thank you for coming back. He didn't have an answer to that wasn't going to be too much, so he just nodded, and Emma turned her chair and rolled toward the school's side entrance with her bag on the handles and her jaw set, and the particular straight posture of someone who has decided that what happened to them is not going to be the thing that defines what happens next. Cole sat on the edge of the raised bed for a moment after she went in. Then he pulled an evidence bag from the glove compartment of his truck. He kept them there from the years after his service when he'd worked briefly as a private security contractor, and he folded the parking receipt into it carefully. He drove to the sheriff's substation and put it on Arias's desk. She stared at it for a long moment, at the timestamp and the partial lot name and the two handwritten words in blue pen. "Where did this come from?" she said. "The school custodian found it near the garden entrance this morning and gave it to Emma. I know the chain of custody is compromised. I know it may not hold. It's compromised, but it's not worthless." Arias was already reaching for a fresh evidence bag. "The lot name, Creek Elam. That's not Willow Creek." Cole looked at her. "Willow Creek doesn't have a paid parking lot," Arias said. "It's a rural school. Visitors park on the access road or in the lot." She was looking at the receipt closely now, leaning down, not touching it. "Creek Elam. What are the other schools in the district?" Cole thought. Hooper said there were 2 others. He warned them this morning. "Millard Creek Elementary," Arias said. "That's what he called it when we spoke. Millard Creek." She straightened. "This receipt is from Millard Creek Elementary's parent pickup lot, paid visitor parking, about 12 miles east of Willow Creek." The room was quiet. Cole thought about the question he'd added to his notes that morning. If he has notes on multiple children, does Emma's name appear, or was she the first selection? "He wasn't only watching Willow Creek," Cole said. "No," Arias said. "He wasn't." She was already reaching for her phone. The investigation that had started with one frightened girl in a garden was about to become something bigger, and Cole could feel it in the way he used to feel a mission briefing shift when the intelligence updated. Everything recalibrating, the scope widening, the stakes resolving into sharper focus. Emma had been one name on a list, and that list existed somewhere. Arias was talking to someone, a detective from the sound of it, not dispatch, and her voice had the clipped urgency of someone conveying information that has changed the shape of a situation. Cole stepped back and let her work. Ranger sat at his heel and looked at the receipt in its evidence bag with the same calm attention he brought to everything, which was the attention of an animal who understood that the moment you were in was always the most important moment. Cole pulled out his phone and texted Patrice. "You know anyone at Millard Creek Elementary? Staff? Admin? Anything?" Her response came in 40 seconds. "Principal's name is Vera Odom. Why?" Cole wrote back. "It's connected to Willow Creek. Arias is on it. Don't call anyone yet." He looked up. Arias had ended her call. She was looking at Cole with an expression that had moved past professional into something adjacent to grim. "Millard Creek pulled their camera footage for the last 2 weeks," she said. "Apparently they had a complaint last week. Different staff member, also dismissed as a parent waiting for a sibling." She paused. "They've got a blue sedan on 4 separate days. Different time window than Willow Creek. Same car description." Cole let that land. "He was rotating," Cole said. "Between at least 2 schools." Arias set her phone down. "Maybe more." "The notes in the car," Cole said. "You said, if there had been notes in the car when they found it." He stopped. That was the other version of the story. The one where the intercept had worked this morning. The one where Arias had pulled him over on County 14 and found whatever was in that sedan. "We still don't have the vehicle," Arias said, reading where he'd gone. "But now we have the receipt, and we have 2 schools, and we have a detective from the county office inbound to help process." She looked at Cole directly. "You need to let us run this from here." "I know. I mean it." "So do I." He held her gaze. "But you should know Emma Calder is calling you this afternoon. She has information about the farmer's market in August, how he may have first identified her. You'll want that." Arias picked up her pen. "What farmer's market?" Cole told her. She wrote it all down, and Cole watched her write it. And somewhere outside the substation window, the Nebraska sky was the particular flat gray of late October, the kind of gray that sat on the wheat fields and made everything look like it was waiting for something. He thought about the receipt. Wed pickup. 4:10. He thought about Wednesday afternoon and Emma near the fence and Ranger stopping mid-stride with his ears lifted and a man who had stood at that fence and called a child by name because he had done his preparation and identified his target and written himself a reminder. And Emma had been 3 days faster than him. She'd noticed him on Monday. She'd reported it on Tuesday. On Wednesday, she'd asked a stranger for help, and the stranger had Ranger, and Ranger had known what everyone else had been too comfortable to see. The man in the gray cap had planned everything except the part where a girl in a wheelchair, who everyone assumed couldn't handle the full version of anything, had been watching him just as carefully as he'd been watching her. And she'd been faster. Cole walked back to his truck in the gravel lot of the sheriff's substation and sat behind the wheel and let himself feel, just for a moment, the particular exhaustion of a situation that hadn't broken bad, that was still here, still unresolved, still requiring him to be steady and patient and not do the thing his training wanted him to do, which was find the man and end the ambiguity with his hands. He opened his notes on his phone. He crossed out the question about whether Emma was the first selection. She wasn't. She was just the one who had been paying attention. He started a new line. Millard Creek Elementary. 4 visits. Different time window. Same vehicle. Who else? Ranger sighed from the passenger seat. A long, slow exhale of contentment that had nothing to do with the situation and everything to do with being in a warm truck. Cole looked at him. "Don't get comfortable," he said. "We're not done." Ranger put his head on his paws and closed his eyes, which was not the response Cole had been looking for, but it was the honest one. The detective from the county office arrived at 2:15. His name was Breyer, Ray Breyer, detective first grade out of the Millard County Major Crimes Unit, which was a unit that handled maybe 4 major crimes a year in a county of 22,000 people and spent the rest of its time on property disputes and methamphetamine cases. He was in his mid-50s, heavy-set in the way of a man who'd been athletic at 30 and stopped keeping track somewhere around 45, and he had the expression of someone who had driven 40 minutes expecting to find a routine suspicious person report and was now recalibrating. Cole was still at the substation when Breyer arrived. He'd told himself he was waiting to make sure the receipt got properly logged and that the Millard Creek connection was fully communicated before he left. This was true. It was also true that he didn't particularly want to leave, which was a different thing. Breyer shook hands with Arias and then looked at Cole with the look that people give when they're deciding how to categorize someone who is present but shouldn't technically be present. "This is Cole Maddox," Arias said. "He's the one who made initial contact with the subject at Willow Creek. Former Navy SEAL. He's been providing civilian support." "Civilian support," Breyer repeated, with the specific neutrality of a man choosing his words carefully. "He found the receipt," Arias said. "He identified the Millard Creek connection." Breyer looked at Cole for a moment, then at Ranger, who was sitting beside Cole's leg and making no effort to be charming. "You live out here?" 6 months, Cole said. "What brings a Navy SEAL to rural Nebraska?" "Retirement," Cole said, "and a dog program." Breyer absorbed this. "Okay," he said, which meant several things at once. He turned back to Arias. "Walk me through it." Cole stepped back and let Arias walk Breyer through it. He listened to make sure nothing was missing and corrected one detail. The timing on Monday's footage, which Arias had slightly compressed in the retelling, and otherwise stayed quiet. He watched Breyer's face as the scope of it landed. The farmer's market. The identification card on the wheelchair bag. The parking receipt with its handwritten reminder. The blue sedan at Millard Creek on 4 separate days. Breyer had a yellow legal pad and he wrote on it in the cramped, pressured handwriting of someone who'd been taking notes by hand for 30 years and had strong feelings about it. When Arias finished, Breyer was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at Cole. "The trust name on the property record. You have that?" Cole pulled up his phone and read it off. Breyer wrote it down. The cross-reference with vehicle registration didn't hit, which means either the trust owns no registered vehicles or the vehicle is registered to a different entity. He tapped his pen on the pad. "But the property's worth a closer look. The mud profile from the child's observation, the road type, the proximity. I can get a drive-by authorized by end of day." "Arias already suggested that," Cole said. "Then we're aligned." Breyer looked at him steadily. "What's your read on the subject, based on everything you observed directly?" Cole had been waiting for someone to ask him that question in exactly that form. He took a breath and organized it the way he used to organize intelligence assessments. Cleanest version, no speculation dressed as fact. Patient, methodical, not impulsive. Every action we documented was deliberate, including the retreat. The phone call this morning was a mistake, which means he's capable of mistakes when he's rattled, but it took getting rattled to produce it. The return to the school lot after making contact with law enforcement suggests the compulsive side of whatever's driving him. The need to surveil outweighs the rational risk calculation under pressure. Cole paused. He's done this before, or something like it. The fence walk on Monday to check sight lines. That's rehearsed behavior, not improvised. Breyer looked at him. You have SEAR training? And JPRA cert, 2 tours running human support and theater. Cole said it without inflection. I know what observation and selection behavior looks like from the operational side. A silence. Breyer wrote something on his pad. Then he said, I'll need a formal statement from you covering everything from initial contact through today. Arias has most of it. I can fill in whatever's missing. Today, Breyer said, before you leave. Understood. Breyer gathered his notes and went to find a conference room, and Cole stood in the outer office with Ranger in the specific flatness of someone who has handed off the work and is now supposed to wait, which was a feeling he had never made peace with, not in the Navy and not after it. Arias appeared at his shoulder. You okay? Fine. You don't look fine. You look like you want to go find the car yourself. I know I'm not going to do that. Do you? He looked at her. I know what my lane is. Okay. She handed him a printed form. Statement template, standard law enforcement. Fill this out. Be specific and sequential. Don't editorialize. Cole took the form and sat down at the empty desk. She pointed him toward and spent the next 40 minutes writing, longhand, everything in the order it happened, as specifically as he could recall it. It was detailed and it was accurate and it was missing nothing material. When he finished, he read it back twice and then handed it to Arias, who read it quickly, made one note in the margin, and initialed the bottom. Good, she said. That's actually good. I've written these before. I can tell. She set it down. Go home, Cole. Be available by phone. We'll contact you if we need anything. What's the timeline on the property drive-by? Tonight or tomorrow morning, depending on the authorization. She met his eyes. I will call you. He took Ranger and went home. The call came at 6:40 that evening. Not from Arias, from Breyer. The property drive-by came back, Breyer said, without preamble. No blue sedan in the visible driveway or around the structures. But one of the responding officers has a sharp eye for tire tracks, and there are fresh tracks on the oil chip road consistent with a vehicle that pulled out recently, within the last 24 hours, based on the weather pattern. A pause. The trust ownership traces to a holding company that traces back to an individual named Dennis Carver, 51 years old, no felony record in Nebraska, 2 misdemeanor trespassing charges from different states, Kansas 2014, Colorado 2017, both dismissed. Cole sat very still. We're running a full background now, Breyer continued. Employment history, address history, the works. The trespassing charges are interesting, both near schools. One was a park adjacent to an elementary school. The other was a community recreation area attached to a middle school. Prior incidents that didn't result in conviction, Cole said. Correct. And prior incidents that somebody logged, which means we have documentation. Breyer paused. We're building a warrant application for the property tonight. The receipt connects him to Millard Creek. The footage at both schools is documented. The phone call to your number is logged, and the tower data came back this afternoon. The cell that made the call pinged a tower consistent with the property location. Cole exhaled. That's enough for the warrant? He asked. Probable cause for a search of the property and the vehicle, if present. Yes. Another pause. I want to be clear about the timeline here. We serve the warrant when we have it, which means tomorrow morning. I'm not going to rush this and give a defense attorney a procedural foothold. That's right, Cole said. I'm telling you the timeline because I need you to hear it directly. Tomorrow morning, not tonight. Whatever you're thinking about doing tonight, you're not doing it. Cole looked at the kitchen table, at his notes, still open on his phone, at Ranger, watching him from across the room. I'm not going anywhere tonight, he said. A pause that told Cole Breyer wasn't entirely sure whether to believe that. "I'll call you after the warrant is served," Breyer said. "Expect that call mid-morning." Cole thanked him and ended the call. He sat at the kitchen table for a long time. He thought about Dennis Carver, 51 years old, 2 prior trespassing charges near schools. Patient and methodical and capable of maintaining a surveillance pattern across at least 2 separate locations over multiple weeks. A property held through a trust, an extra layer of distance between the man and the thing he owned, which was itself a kind of preparation. He thought about the farmer's market in August. Carver walking through, maybe stopping at the herb table, reading the name tag on a girl in a wheelchair, and looking at her and making a calculation. He thought about Emma saying he picked me because of the chair. He made himself stop thinking about Dennis Carver and went to bed at 10 and lay awake until after midnight, and then slept badly until 5, which was normal for him and had been normal for years. I was at the Willow Creek parking lot by 7:15 the next morning because he'd told Sandra he would be there when school opened, which was true, and because he needed to be somewhere instead of sitting in his kitchen staring at his phone, which was also true. Sandra arrived at 7:40 with Emma. She looked like she'd slept as badly as Cole had, which was to say she'd gotten through the night and was still standing. "Any news?" she asked before she'd even gotten Emma's bag out of the car. "Active warrant," Cole said. "Execution this morning? That's all I know." Sandra processed this with the compressed efficiency of someone who had gotten good at processing difficult information quickly because she didn't have the luxury of taking time with it. She nodded and got Emma's bag and held the door while Emma maneuvered out of the car. Emma looked at Cole. "They found him?" "They found enough to search his property. That's the step before finding him." "And then?" "And then it depends on what they find." Emma thought about this. She had a book under her arm, thick, library-bound, the kind of book with a Dewey Decimal sticker on the spine. She tucked it into her bag. "Okay," she said, and rolled toward the school entrance like a person who has decided that the things they cannot control are not going to spend the day being thought about, which was a healthier response than Cole had managed. Sandra watched her go and then turned back to Cole. "She slept fine," Sandra said. "I didn't. She did." Something crossed her face, the same involuntary fierce pride from the parking lot 2 days ago. "I went in to check on her at 11 and she was completely out, book on her chest. She stopped. "She's handling this better than I am." "She knows she did everything right," Cole said. "That helps." Sandra looked at him directly. "Did she?" "I keep going back to it. What if you hadn't been there? What if Ranger hadn't stopped? What if she'd been alone at the fence and I hadn't answered my phone that night?" "She still would have backed her chair away," Cole said. "She still would have told the story right. It would have taken longer to be believed, but she would have kept telling it." Sandra was quiet for a moment. "You don't know that," she said. "I know her observation log was better than mine when I walked up on that situation cold," Cole said. "Cracked taillight. One-sided mud on the door. Consistent timing to the minute across 3 days. She'd been running that assessment since Monday and holding it by herself." He looked at Sandra steadily. "She was ready before I got there. I just made it easier for people to listen." Sandra pressed her lips together. She was working very hard at not crying, which Cole recognized because he'd watched a lot of people work very hard at not crying in his life, usually after a situation had passed and the adrenaline was gone and the actual weight of what had almost happened arrived. "I should have listened to her on Tuesday," Sandra said. "Yeah," Cole said. "But you were also working 14 hours and your kid tells you stories about a man at a fence and your brain puts that in the anxiety management pile because it's safer there." "That's not an excuse." "No, it's an explanation. Those aren't the same thing." He said it the same way she'd said it to him, without sharpening it. She heard it that way and something in her shoulders dropped slightly. "I hate this," she said. "I know. I hate that she had to be the one." She stopped. She shouldn't have had to be that alert at 11 years old. She should be worried about fractions and what to wear on picture day, not cataloging a predator's vehicle description. Cole didn't answer. There wasn't an answer to that. He just stood with her in the cold parking lot while the school filled up around them and the county road ran flat and pale toward the horizon. Sandra eventually went to her car and drove to work, and Cole went to find Walt and sit in the utility room with the coffee Walt offered and watch the school's front camera feed, which was now displaying correctly because someone from the district office had adjusted the angle during yesterday's security review and had also, apparently, filed the work order that had been outstanding since February, which Walt found both satisfying and irritating in equal measure. At 9:17, Cole's phone rang. Breyer. "We executed the warrant at 8:50, Breyer said. Carver was present at the property. Cole's hand tightened on the phone. "He's in custody," Breyer said. "Taken without incident. He was apparently still in bed." Cole let out a breath through his nose. "What did you find?" A pause. The kind of pause that precedes information that changes the scope of a thing. "In the detached garage," Breyer said, "we found a blue sedan matching the description. Cracked rear driver's side light, consistent with every documented observation. Inside the vehicle, on the passenger seat, there was a manila folder. Inside the folder," another pause. "Handwritten notes. Dates, times, locations. 3 schools, Cole. Not 2. Willow Creek, Millard Creek, and Riverside Elementary over in Clay County. Observation records going back 11 weeks. The utility room was very quiet. How many children? Cole asked. By name 6. Descriptions without names, possibly 3 or 4 more. Breyer's voice had taken on the particular weight of someone who is being professionally controlled about something. They are not professionally controlled about. Emma Calder's name is at the top of the first page, with a note next to it. Cole waited. The note says confirmed, accessible route, solo wait time 15 plus minutes. Cole sat with that. Confirmed. He'd done enough reconnaissance, he'd verified enough details. He'd moved Emma from the list of candidates to the column of targets, and he'd noted the thing he thought made her vulnerable. The accessible route from the garden to the road. The 15 minutes she sometimes waited alone before pickup. He'd watched her long enough to know her schedule better than her school did. The other names, Cole said. Are those children safe? We've been in contact with all 3 schools since this morning. Parents of named children are being notified now. The Clay County Sheriff's Office has a unit at Riverside Elementary. A pause. Nobody was taken. Nobody was harmed. The warrant came before any of the documented attempts progressed to physical contact. Cole thought about Emma's handwriting note. He was going to try to take me. She'd said it simply, directly, without flinching. The same way she'd said, "You believe me," with the register of someone who understood exactly what was happening and had decided to look at it straight rather than sideways. Charges? Cole asked. The DA's office is reviewing now. Stalking, criminal surveillance of a minor. Those are the initial counts. The prior trespassing charges in Kansas and Colorado are being requested. The folder is significant. It's evidence of premeditation, pattern, and multiple targets. The DA I spoke to 40 minutes ago used the word significant 3 times in a row. Breyer's voice shifted slightly. We're looking at a substantial case. Cole nodded at nothing. Does Emma need to provide a formal statement? At some point, yes, but that's managed carefully with a minor, through the family, with a victim advocate present. There's no rush on that piece. The physical evidence in the folder and the sedan and the camera documentation is the core of the case. Emma's statement supports it, but the case doesn't rest on her alone. She'll want to give it, Cole said. I expect she will. A pause that felt like Breyer choosing something. Your statement was thorough. The timeline you documented from the beginning, the specificity of it, that's been useful. The manner you handled the initial situation, keeping the subject from feeling cornered while getting the child out of contact. I just walked over, Cole said. Right. A pause. Maddox. The property we searched. On the back wall of that garage. There were photographs. Printed from a camera, candid, taken from distance. Children at school events, outdoor programs. Breyer stopped. Emma was in 6 of them. Cole looked at the utility room wall. He thought about the farmer's market, the purple name tag on her jacket, the cheerful chaos of a community fundraiser, and somewhere in it a man with a camera, working. He thought about the card on the wheelchair bag, the cracked taillight, the mud on the driver's door. All the things Emma had noticed and tried to tell people about. All the details she'd been holding, carefully, by herself, until someone stopped long enough to receive them. I need to tell her family, Cole said, before it gets to them through another channel. That's appropriate, Breyer said. The victim advocate will follow up with official notification through the DA's office. But family notification of the arrest is appropriate now. A pause. Cole, you handled this right. I want to say that plainly. Cole didn't respond immediately. He sat with it for a moment. The particular discomfort of being told you did something right in a situation where right hadn't felt like a choice, where it had just been the only available option at the time. Emma Calder handled it right, he said. She started this on Monday. She did, Breyer said. Make sure she knows. Cole ended the call. He sat in the utility room for another moment, looking at the monitor with its now correctly angled view of the front garden and the county road running flat and empty beyond the fence. The garden was bright with the last of the October light, tomatoes gone orange, the sunflowers finally bent by the week's wind, the accessible path between the beds clear and neat. Walt appeared in the doorway with a fresh cup of coffee that Cole hadn't asked for. You look like you got news, Walt said. They got him. Walt set the coffee down. Good, he said simply, and left. Cole picked up the coffee. It was too hot to drink, but he held it anyway. He called Sandra Calder. She answered on the second ring, her voice carrying the background noise of the distribution center, machinery, the flat compressed air of a large warehouse. He's in custody, Cole said. Arrested this morning at his property. They found evidence of surveillance at 3 schools. Emma was his primary target. A long silence. Sandra. I'm here. Her voice was very controlled. Is it over? The active threat is over. The legal process is going to take time, but he's not going to be near a school. Cole paused. There's more information, details about what they found, but that'll come through official channels. A victim advocate will contact you today about the formal process. Okay. Another pause. Cole, I'm standing in the middle of a warehouse and I'm trying very hard not to. Take a minute, Cole said. Go somewhere quiet. I can't leave the floor. She stopped, started differently. 6 of them. You said 3 schools. Did you say 6 children? By name, yes, possibly more. The silence this time was longer and had a different texture. The silence of someone doing the math on how many parents were going to have the same minute Sandra was having right now, and feeling the weight of that in addition to her own. Emma stopped him, Sandra said. Emma started the process that stopped him, Cole said. She noticed, she reported, she persisted after being dismissed, and she provided evidence that moved the investigation from a suspicious person report to a warrant application. He paused. She did that. She's 11 years old. Yes. Another silence. I need to get back on the floor, Sandra said. Her voice had steadied, the same flat, functional steadiness of a person who has processed something very large in a very small amount of time because they've had practice. Will you? She stopped. Can you tell her before I get there? I don't want her to find out some other way. I'll tell her, Cole said. He found Emma in the hallway outside her 6th grade classroom, between classes, navigating the controlled chaos of 200 kids' changing rooms. She spotted him before he spotted her. She was good at that, the peripheral tracking of someone who's spent a lot of time in spaces designed for other people's dimensions. She pulled out of the foot traffic and stopped beside a row of lockers. Cole crouched down. They found him, he said. He's in custody, this morning. Emma looked at him. She didn't say anything for a moment. She looked at her hands, which were in her lap, and then she looked at Cole again with an expression that was working through something in real time, relief and something more complicated behind it. The feeling of a weight lifting that you'd been carrying long enough you'd forgotten it wasn't just part of you. The other kids, she said, the ones on his list. Safe, Cole said. All of them. Emma nodded slowly. They were going to tell you there was a list, Cole said. I wanted you to hear it from me first. Your name was at the top. She absorbed this without flinching. I know why, she said. Because of the chair. Because he thought the chair meant easy. She said it without anger, which surprised him. There was something in it that was almost matter-of-fact, the particular clarity of a person who has looked at an ugly truth for long enough to name it without it owning them. He was wrong. He was wrong, Cole agreed. The bell rang. Around them, the hallway cleared in the practiced rush of kids who had perfected the 60-second classroom transition. Emma didn't move to join it. Ranger, she said. Is he in your truck? Yeah. Can I see him before I go back to class? Cole looked at his watch. Your teacher's going to notice you're late. Ms. Renner won't say anything. She owes me one. He almost smiled. Give me 2 minutes to get him from the truck. He brought Ranger in through the side entrance. The school had given him a standing pass for the agricultural therapy program, and found Emma still by the lockers, the hallway empty now, just the two of them, and the fluorescent lights and the squeak of distant footsteps. Ranger went directly to Emma without being directed, which he usually did with people he'd had a significant encounter with. He put his muzzle against her knee and stayed there. Emma put her hand on his head. She sat with that for a long moment, her hand on Ranger's gray head, the dog completely still and completely present, that specific quality of attention that working dogs have when they decide something matters. He noticed first, Emma said. Ranger. He stopped when you backed your chair away, Cole said. He was already watching you. But you came over because of him. I came over because of both of you. Emma looked up at Cole. People kept saying I was too sensitive, too imaginative, that I was making it bigger than it was. She held his gaze. But I wasn't. No, Cole said. You weren't. I just needed someone to take the same amount of time with it that I did. Cole looked at her. This 11-year-old girl in a practical ponytail and a heavy jacket, sitting beside her school locker with her hand on a retired military dog, saying the plainest possible version of a truth that most adults spent their whole lives circling without landing on it. He thought about Hooper's 4 phone calls from parents who thought this was an overreaction. He thought about Ms. Renner and the word precious. He thought about the way Sandra had said she's not fragile, with the fierce exhaustion of someone who had been saying it for years to audiences who smiled and nodded and kept not hearing it. Emma, he said, there are going to be people who want to talk to you about what you did. District people, maybe news people, definitely the legal process. And some of them are going to frame it as lucky, the right adult at the right time, or the dog being in the right place. Emma looked at him. You should correct that, Cole said. Every time you hear it, because it wasn't luck. It was 3 days of work that you did by yourself, before anyone showed up. A long pause. Emma took her hand off Ranger's head and straightened in her chair. She had the posture now of someone who has received information they intend to keep. Okay, she said. She turned her chair and headed down the empty hallway toward her classroom. Halfway there, she stopped and looked back. Cole? Yeah. The garden. She paused. They're going to want to close it. After all this, they're going to say it's not safe because it's near the fence. Cole looked at her. Don't let them, she said. She turned and rolled through the classroom door, and it closed behind her with the soft thump of a school door settling back into its frame. Cole stood in the empty hallway with Ranger at his heel. Through the narrow window set into the classroom door, he could see Emma maneuvering to her desk, the teacher turning to acknowledge her late arrival with a nod rather than a reprimand, the other students making the automatic half-attention shift of kids who are aware something has happened this week without knowing exactly what. Emma settled at her desk, opened her book, and looked up at the board, like someone who had decided the morning was over and it was time for what came next. Cole walked back down the hallway with Ranger, through the side entrance out into the cold Nebraska morning. The wheat fields ran in every direction, pale gold and flat, bending in the wind. He had a call to return from Patrice, who had sent 6 increasingly emphatic text messages starting at 7 a.m., and a voicemail from a number he didn't recognize that turned out, when he played it back in the parking lot, to be Gerald Hooper. Hooper's voice on the message sounded different than it had at any point in the preceding 4 days. Less managed. More like a man who had thought about something overnight and was calling because the thought wouldn't leave him alone. Mr. Maddox, this is Gerald Hooper at Willow Creek. A pause in which Cole could hear the particular discomfort of someone who is about to say something they're not accustomed to saying. I owe you an apology. I owe Emma a better one than what I gave her yesterday. I'm planning to talk to her today, with her mother's permission, and I wanted you to know that. Another pause. The security review is going to produce significant changes. The garden will not be closed. I've already made that decision. Emma's program, her spot in it, that's not going away. His voice went slightly rougher. I should have listened on Tuesday. That's all. That's what I wanted to say. The message ended. Cole put the phone in his pocket. He stood in the parking lot of Willow Creek Learning Center on a cold Thursday morning in late October with a retired military dog and a sky that was the flat gray of a day that didn't know yet whether it was going to rain. He thought about Tuesday. The moment Hooper had said active imagination with the careful neutrality of someone who had already decided before the conversation started. He thought about Emma backing her chair 3 inches away from the fence, that small, involuntary retreat, the only honest thing in a situation where the adult nearby had been performing calm. He thought about Ranger stopping mid-stride on a sidewalk because something in the picture was wrong, the way something was always wrong before it became undeniably wrong, the way trained attention caught the early signal that comfort and routine caused everyone else to miss. The gray cap, the blue sedan, the cracked taillight, one-sided mud on a driver's door. WID pickup. 410. A girl in a wheelchair who people had spent her whole life telling what she couldn't do, carrying 3 days of precise, accurate intelligence alone because no one would take the time to receive it. Cole got in his truck. He sat for a moment. Then he sent a message to Patrice. Carver is in custody. 3 schools, 6 named children. Emma's safe. I'll explain the rest when I see you. He started the engine. He didn't know yet what the legal process was going to look like. How long, how complicated, whether Carver's history in Kansas and Colorado was going to matter the way it should. He didn't know whether the 4 parents who'd called Hooper to complain about an overreaction were going to feel shame or just quiet relief and never say anything about it. He didn't know whether the district's security review was going to produce real change or a binder full of policies that sat on a shelf. But he knew the garden wasn't closing. He knew Emma Calder was in a classroom right now, at her desk, with her book open, 3 days of doing everything right behind her and the rest of her life still in front of her. And he knew that on a Wednesday afternoon that could have ended very differently. A dog had stopped on a sidewalk and a girl had backed her wheelchair 3 inches and said 2 words to a stranger. And the stranger had been the right kind of stranger. Cole pulled out of the lot and drove west on County 14 into the pale October morning, Ranger riding shotgun, the wheat fields running flat and unhurried on every side, bending when the wind told them to, standing back up after. 3 weeks passed. The legal process moved at the speed legal processes move. Not slow exactly, but thick, like something working through resistance. The DA's office filed charges on a Tuesday, 14 days after Carver's arrest. Criminal stalking of a minor, 6 counts. Criminal surveillance, 3 counts. And 1 count of attempted enticement, which was the charge that covered the Wednesday afternoon at the fence, the sedan in the lot, the note written on a parking receipt. The prior trespassing charges from Kansas and Colorado were entered into the record. A defense attorney appeared and filed the standard motions, and the case settled into the particular bureaucratic patience of the court system, which was going to take months and possibly longer. Cole followed it the way he followed most things he couldn't control. From a distance, with attention, without letting it own his days. What owned his days in November was the garden. The district security review had produced a 40-page document with 17 recommendations, most of them reasonable, a few of them the kind of thing that looks good in a document and falls apart on contact with reality. The garden redesign was recommendation. 11. Increase setback from the road-adjacent fence, restructure the accessible path. So wheelchair users work the interior beds rather than the perimeter. Install a low secondary fence at the garden's road edge as a visibility buffer. Cole had read the recommendation and driven to Willow Creek and walked the garden for 40 minutes by himself on a Saturday morning, measuring distances and looking at sight lines and thinking about how you build security into a space without building the feeling of security into a space, which were related problems, but not the same problem. Then he'd called Hooper. The setback's right, Cole said. The secondary fence is right. The accessible path redesign needs rethinking. In what way? The way it's drawn, wheelchair users end up in the center beds, which sounds safer because they're farther from the fence, but it puts them out of sight from the school entrance, which is actually worse. A pause. What would you do differently? Diagonal path instead of a perimeter loop. Everyone works the same bed, same access, same visibility from the building. The secondary fence handles the road exposure. Cole paused. And you need raised beds that are actually designed for wheelchair reach. What's out there now is modified after the fact. It works because Emma modified it herself, but it shouldn't require a kid to solve the design problem the school didn't solve. Hooper was quiet for a moment. You've done design work before? I've done field work, Cole said. It's the same principle. You build the environment around what the mission requires, not around what's convenient. Another pause. The district has a contractor doing the redesign. I know. I'm not trying to replace the contractor. I'm saying somebody should walk it with Emma before the contractor draws the final plan. Hooper considered this. Can you set that up? If Sandra agrees. Sandra agreed on the same day Cole asked her, with the particular efficiency of a woman who had learned to make decisions quickly because she didn't have time not to. The three of them, Cole, Sandra, and Emma, walked the garden on a Saturday in early November while Ranger moved between the beds, and Hooper took notes on his legal pad, and a contractor named Fisk stood with his own plans and the particular expression of someone who had expected to be the expert in the room and was revising that expectation. Emma went through the garden the way she went through everything, methodically, without performing the process for the audience. She tested each bed's reach from her chair, identified two that she'd modified on her own over the past 6 months, and explained the modifications clearly enough that Fisk wrote them directly into his notes without being asked. When she got to the northeast corner, the bed closest to what had been the fence, the bed she'd been tending when Cole first walked up, she stopped. She sat there for a moment, looking at the chain-link fence and the county road beyond it and the flat pale fields beyond that. I want this one to stay, she said. We can keep it, Fisk said. The secondary buffer fence will... I know about the buffer fence, Emma said. She kept looking at the road. I want this bed to stay where it is because I don't want to be the person who moved away from the fence because something bad almost happened. Nobody said anything. I'm going to keep growing tomatoes here, Emma said. Same spot, same bed. She turned her chair back toward the garden center. Just put the buffer fence in and make the path better. Fisk looked at Cole. Cole looked at Fisk. Do what she said, Cole said. The redesign was completed by mid-November. 2 days after it finished, the first frost hit Millard County, and the garden went dormant in the way of gardens in Nebraska. Sudden and complete, like something making a decision. Emma came to see the finished path on the Saturday after the frost, when everything was gray-brown and still, and she rolled through it twice without saying much, and then said it was good and left. Which was, Cole had learned, Emma's version of a significant compliment. The community meeting was Hooper's idea, which surprised Cole until Hooper explained it. The 4 parents who called me, Hooper said. They were standing in the school parking lot on a Wednesday afternoon, not a Thursday, which had started to feel like the default day for everything difficult to happen. I've spoken to 3 of them individually since the arrest. The 4th hasn't returned my calls. The 3 I spoke to, they're not bad people. They were working from incomplete information, and they made bad assumptions about whose account to trust. Emma's account, Cole said. Yes. Hooper straightened his tie. Today's had a small geometric pattern, blues and grays. I thought about keeping this quiet. The school handled it. The arrest was made. The program continues. Move on. He paused. But Emma is still a student here. She's going to be a student here for 2 more years. And if we don't talk about what happened, about why her warnings weren't taken seriously at first, then we just reset to the same default. Cole looked at him. She deserves better than that, Hooper said. And frankly, so do the other kids who have something to say that adults aren't taking seriously. Cole thought about this. Have you talked to Sandra? Yesterday. She said it's Emma's call. And Emma? Hooper's expression shifted slightly. Emma said, and I'm quoting her directly, tell people what they got wrong. That's the useful part. Cole was quiet for a moment. Set it up, he said. The meeting was a Thursday evening, 2 weeks later, in the school gymnasium. Hooper had kept the announcement low-key. A community conversation about school safety and the Willow Creek incident, phrased specifically to avoid the kind of framing that turned a community conversation into a public spectacle. He'd expected maybe 60, 70 people. 212 showed up. They filled the folding chairs and stood along the walls and sat on the gymnasium bleachers, and the noise of them assembling was the noise of a community that had been sitting with something for weeks and needed somewhere to put it. Cole stood near the side wall with Ranger and watched people find seats and greet each other and not know exactly what they were supposed to be feeling. Hooper opened it. He spoke for about 8 minutes, which was the right length. He described the timeline factually, acknowledged the school's failure to respond adequately to Emma's initial report, and said plainly, without softening it, that the decision to characterize Emma's observations as the product of an active imagination had been wrong. One of the 4 parents who had called him was sitting in the 3rd row. Cole had spotted her when she came in, a woman in her 40s with the specific expression of someone who had been building up to something for 2 weeks and was waiting for the moment to release it. She raised her hand before Hooper had finished. "I was one of the people who called the school," she said. She stood up, which seemed like something she'd decided to do when the moment came. "I told Gerald that I thought this was an overreaction, that a former military man was creating a situation where there wasn't one." She paused. "I'd like to say directly and in front of everyone that I was wrong, and I'd like to say it in front of Emma, because she's the person I was actually wrong about." She looked across the gym. Emma was in the front row beside Sandra. She looked at the woman with the specific directness that Cole had come to recognize as Emma's default mode for receiving difficult things. Full attention, no performance. "Thank you," Emma said. The woman sat down. There was a moment of silence in the gymnasium that had a particular texture, not uncomfortable, not exactly comfortable, somewhere in the register of 200 people absorbing something true at the same time. Hooper asked if Emma wanted to speak. Emma had told her mother the previous week that she might and she might not, and she wouldn't know until she was there. Sandra had told Cole this with the expression of someone who was trying to let their child make their own choices and finding it harder than expected. Emma looked at Hooper. "Yeah," she said. "I'll say something." She rolled to the front of the room, which took longer than it would have if the gymnasium had been set up with better aisle spacing, and Cole could see the quality of attention in the room shift during those seconds. The particular attention that people give when they realize they've been thinking about someone as a subject and are now waiting to hear them speak. Emma didn't use notes. She told Cole she wasn't going to use notes because notes made it feel like a presentation, and this wasn't a presentation. "I started noticing him on Monday," she said. "I've gone over it a lot since then. Why I noticed, what I saw that other people didn't. And I think the answer is that I notice things because I have to. When you're in a wheelchair, you spend a lot of time thinking about your environment, where you can go, who's in the way, what's different today than it was yesterday." She paused. "I think most people turn that kind of attention off when they feel safe. I don't really turn it off." The gymnasium was very quiet. "I told Miss Renner on Tuesday," Emma said. "She didn't dismiss me to be mean. I think she just didn't have a place to put the information. A kid in a wheelchair noticing a stranger at the fence. That didn't fit the category of something that needed to be urgent." She looked at the room steadily. "But I was right, and being right when people don't believe you is—" She stopped for a moment. "It's lonely. That's the word for it." Cole looked at his hands. "I'm not saying this to make anyone feel bad," Emma said. "I'm saying it because there are other kids in this room who notice things. And some of them have tried to tell adults something, and the adult made the same calculation Ms. Renner made, that it didn't fit the category." She looked around the gymnasium. "The category needs to be bigger. That's what I want people to take from this." She turned her chair and rolled back to the front row. The applause started before she got there. Not the polite kind, not the kind that fills silences, but the kind that happens when a room has been waiting to do something with what it's feeling and someone gave it the shape. Cole didn't clap. He stood against the wall with his arms crossed and Ranger beside him and watched Emma Calder settle back beside her mother and receive the room's response with the same directness she'd given everything else. Looking at it straight, not deflecting it, not performing gratitude. Sandra had her hand on Emma's arm. Neither of them said anything. After the main session, Hooper opened it to general comments and questions, and the room had the productive energy of a community that had moved past the part where it needed to be angry and into the part where it needed to figure out what to change. People talked about pickup protocols and outdoor supervision and identification practices and communication channels between parents and staff. A woman who turned out to be a retired child psychologist made 3 specific suggestions about how to handle student reports of concerning behavior that were practical enough that Hooper wrote all 3 down. Cole was not asked to speak. He hadn't expected to be. That wasn't why he was there. He was there because Emma was there, and because 4 weeks ago she had backed her wheelchair 3 inches and said 2 words to a stranger, and he wanted to be in the room when her community finally said the things she'd needed to hear from the beginning. Afterward, in the parking lot, with people filing out around them, Emma found him near his truck. "You didn't clap," she said. "No." "Why not?" Cole thought about it. "Because clapping felt like the wrong thing, and I couldn't figure out the right thing." Emma considered this. "That's an honest answer. You prefer those?" "Yeah." She looked across the parking lot at the people still moving toward their cars, the conversations breaking into smaller groups, a few people stopping to talk to Hooper near the entrance. It was good, the meeting. She said it like she was still deciding whether it was true. It didn't fix anything that already happened. No. But it changed something. "Yeah," Cole said. "It did." She looked up at him. "What happens now, for you?" Cole looked at the question. "I keep coming to the garden program, twice a month." "That's not what I mean." He looked at her. "I mean, what are you doing?" Emma said, with the particular impatience of someone who has listened to an evasive answer and identified it correctly. "You live here. You walk ranger. You come to the school twice a month." She paused. "That's not enough for someone like you." Cole was quiet for a moment. "Someone like me." "Someone who does things," Emma said. "You can't just stop." He thought about how to answer that honestly. "I'm figuring it out," he said finally. "That's also an honest answer," Emma said, less certainly this time. "I know." She turned her chair and then stopped. "Cole." She said it with the quality of someone who has thought about whether to say the next thing and decided yes. "Yeah. I'm going to be okay." She said it simply, not reassuring him exactly, more like stating a fact she wanted on the record. "I know that's what people are wondering, whether I'm going to be scared, whether the chair's going to feel like a target now." She looked at him steadily. "I'm going to be okay." Cole looked at her for a moment. "I know," he said, and he did. Emma rolled back toward the entrance where Sandra was waiting. She moved through the parking lot the way she moved everywhere, efficient, direct, without making it look like effort even when it was, and Cole watched her go until the school door closed behind her. Ranger pressed against his leg. Cole put his hand on the dog's head briefly and then dropped it. He stood in the parking lot for a while after the last cars left. The gymnasium lights were still on inside, orange-yellow through the high windows, and he could see silhouettes moving around. Hooper and a few staff members stacking chairs. The work that happens after the thing everyone attended is over. He thought about what Emma had asked. "What are you doing?" It wasn't a small question. He'd left the Navy with a retirement package and a retirement dog, and 12 years of operational experience that had exactly 0 civilian applications in the standard sense. He'd been in rural Nebraska for 6 months because property was cheap and quiet, and because Patrice had told him about the agricultural therapy program at a time when he'd needed to feel useful and not known how to say it. He'd been half present for 6 months, running the loop past Willow Creek, coming to the program twice a month, sitting on his back porch watching the wheat fields and telling himself he was resting. He hadn't been resting. He'd been waiting. He just hadn't known what he was waiting for until a dog stopped on a sidewalk. He drove home on County 14 with the windows down despite the cold, because the cold air was useful, and he was still working through something. He turned onto his road and pulled into his driveway and sat in the truck for a moment. Then he got out and went inside and opened his laptop and spent 2 hours on it, which was longer than he'd spent on any single task since moving to Nebraska. He was looking at agricultural therapy programs, their structure, their funding mechanisms, their staffing patterns, the gap that existed in most of them between what the programs attempted and what they actually had the resources to do well. He'd been in that gap twice a month for 6 months and understood it from the inside. I was also looking at veteran-to-civilian transition programs, child safety advocacy organizations, working dog integration programs that placed retired military animals in community settings. Not because he had a plan. He was honest with himself about that. He had the beginning of a direction, which was different. At midnight, he closed the laptop and made coffee. He actually drank this time and sat at the kitchen table with Ranger under his feet and the notes he'd been keeping open on his phone. He deleted the questions column. He'd answered most of them, and the ones he hadn't weren't questions anymore. He started a new note. What next? He sat with the blank page for a while. Then he wrote, "The garden. Start there." December arrived, and with it the particular stillness of a Nebraska winter, which was a different stillness than any other season. Not the charged stillness of late summer or the waiting stillness of October, but something more complete, like a pause the land was fully committed to. The garden at Willow Creek was dormant and snow-edged, and the secondary buffer fence stood clean and new along the roadside, and the accessible path ran in its new diagonal between beds that were waiting for spring. Emma had already told Cole which vegetables she was planning for the next season. Tomatoes again, obviously, but also pole beans, which she'd decided to try because she'd read that they were harder, and she wanted to see if she could make them work in the Nebraska climate. Cole had told her he'd look into a vertical support system that would work from a seated position without requiring someone to stand to manage the harvest. She'd said she'd already looked it up and sent him 3 links. He'd told her he'd seen those, and they were wrong for the soil conditions, and sent her 2 different ones. She'd examined his links for 2 days and then said he was right, which had taken the specific phrasing of, "Okay, those are better," which Cole had learned to understand as the Emma Calder equivalent of a standing ovation. The case against Dennis Carver had moved into the pretrial phase with the particular methodical weight of a prosecution that was not in a hurry because it didn't need to be. The DA's office had filed 17 evidentiary exhibits. The defense had filed a suppression motion on the receipt, argued the chain of custody was compromised, which it was, though the judge would have to decide how much that mattered in context, and the case was scheduled for preliminary hearing in February. Breyer had called Cole once to update him. Arias called occasionally about procedural things. Cole kept himself informed and kept himself out of the way, which was exactly the right role and harder than it sounded. He'd started showing up at the school not just on Thursdays, but on other days as well. Tuesdays sometimes, when the indoor portion of the agricultural program ran in the school's small greenhouse space, and occasionally on Fridays when the program's occupational therapist, who was Patrice's replacement for the semester, needed a second set of hands setting up adaptive equipment. Nobody had officially asked him to do this. He'd just started doing it, and nobody had told him to stop. Hooper, to his credit, had simply gotten out of the way. Patrice, to her less credit but equal usefulness, had told Cole he was becoming a fixture, and that fixtures were good, and that he should stop pretending he wasn't attached to this school and the people in it. Cole had said he wasn't pretending anything. Patrice had given him the look she gave when she considered a conversation effectively won. On the last Thursday before winter break, the school held its agricultural program end-of-semester gathering in the gymnasium. The students who'd been part of the garden brought in the things they'd preserved from the fall harvest, jarred tomatoes and dried herbs, and the last of the squash that had been stored in the school's small root cellar. And there was a table with mismatched chairs and food that the parents brought, and the noise of it was the comfortable noise of people who had figured out how to be in a room together. Emma was at the end of the table nearest the gymnasium door, which Cole recognized as her default position, the accessible spot, the one with the most exit options, the one she'd identified without being told because she always identified those things. She had a jar of tomatoes on the table in front of her that she'd grown and processed herself, and she was explaining to a younger student, a boy of maybe 8, just starting the program, how to read whether a tomato was ready to harvest. "You don't squeeze it," she was saying. "You look at it. Color first, then the stem end. If the stem end is still hard, it's not ready, even if the color looks right." The boy was looking at the jar, not at Emma. "How do you know all this?" he asked. "I paid attention," Emma said. Cole was near the gymnasium entrance with Ranger, who had become the program's unofficial greeter and was managing the role with the dignity appropriate to a retired military professional. He watched Emma explain about the tomatoes and thought about the parallel of it. The same attention she'd turned on a man in a gray cap, applied now to the soil color of a Cherokee purple tomato in a Nebraska root cellar. The same calibrated observation, the same patience with the details that other people glossed over. The world was full of people who watched without seeing. Emma Calder was not one of them. Sandra appeared at Cole's elbow with 2 cups of coffee from the table. "She's going to run this program in 2 years," Sandra said. "I'm just telling you." "She's going to tell them everything that's wrong with the design," Cole said. "And she'll be right. That too." Sandra looked at her daughter for a moment. "She sleeps fine. Still." She said it quietly, like she was checking something she checked regularly. "I keep waiting for it to land differently, for her to wake up scared." "She might," Cole said, "at some point." "I know, but she hasn't."
Sandra wrapped both hands around the coffee cup. She said something to me last week that I keep thinking about. I asked if she was still thinking about what happened a lot. She said she thinks about what she did right more than what almost happened. She paused. I don't know how she got to that. At 11 years old. She knows she did everything right, Cole said. It's easier to live with something when you know you did everything right. Sandra looked at him sidelong. And when you don't? Cole thought about that. About the things in his service years that he'd done right and the things he hadn't, and the particular weight distribution of carrying both. That's harder, he said. But you still get to decide what you do with the next thing. Sandra held that for a moment. Then she said, Patrice told me you're looking into starting something here, some kind of expanded program. Patrice talks too much. Patrice talks exactly the right amount. Sandra looked at him. Is it true? Cole looked across the gymnasium at the table of students and parents and jarred tomatoes and mismatched chairs, and Hooper in the corner talking to the occupational therapist with his legal pad in his hand, and he thought about the blank page on his phone that still said, The Garden. Start there. Working on it, he said. Sandra nodded. She took her coffee and went back to the table. Ranger pressed against Cole's leg in the automatic way he did when he'd finished scanning a room and determined it was safe, which was the highest assessment he offered. Cole looked down at him, gray muzzle, mismatched ears, the particular self-possession of an animal who had never had an unearned opinion in his life. Yeah, Cole said quietly. Me too. Across the room, Emma had finished explaining about the tomatoes. The younger boy was holding the jar now, looking at it seriously, and Emma was watching him with the patient attention of someone who understands that you can't rush the moment when another person decides to start paying attention. Cole stood at the gymnasium door and let the warmth of the room settle around him. The noise of it, the mismatched chairs and the coffee that was slightly too bitter, and the early winter dark outside the high windows, and Ranger at his heel, and Emma Calder in a wheelchair at the head of a table, explaining what she knew to someone younger who needed to hear it. Some things were not fixed. The court case was months away. The 4 parents who had been wrong about Emma would mostly go on without saying so publicly. Ms. Renner had transferred to another school before the semester ended, which was the path of least discomfort, which was very human and very disappointing in equal measure. The security review sat in a binder on Hooper's shelf, and some of its recommendations would be implemented, and some wouldn't. The world wasn't clean, but the garden was still here, and Emma was in it. And the boy with the jar was looking at it the way Emma had told him to look. Color first, then the stem end. His 8-year-old brow furrowed with the concentration of someone learning how to see what they'd been looking at all along. That was something. That was, Cole thought, actually quite a lot. Outside, the Nebraska winter sat on the wheat fields in the particular silence of a thing that had decided to stay a while. Inside, 200 people ate bad food and talked about tomatoes and didn't know they were exactly where they needed to be. Ranger exhaled and closed his eyes. Cole kept his open. The world doesn't ask you to be fearless. It asks you to say 2 words to the right stranger and trust that being heard is not the same as being lucky. It is the thing you earned by refusing to go quiet.